Welcome in college baseball central fans back in the greatest state in America, breaking down all the games. I guess we'll start with the return of Jackson. Jackson, good to have you back. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. A lot of crazy baseball over the weekend.
Yep. Unfortunately for Jackson, he didn't get to be here for. I guess he's frozen. He didn't get to be here for the Baylor Tech, where we try and break that down. Marshall, you're back again. A&M's riding high. How
Yeah,
we feeling?
feeling great. I actually had a good weekend. Got back on track against the Bulldogs, Mississippi State, and hey, we got pro baseball starting tomorrow too. So that's a little Christmas present.
Yeah, everything's coming around. Joey,
Yeah.
mixed emotions after last night as your undergrad beat your graduate school.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how to react. It's just like entering tonight. Last night I wanted the Islanders because I actually graduated there, and plus it'd be cool to see the mid-major team of mine win. So yeah, but at the same time I'm like, Longhorns kind of concern me. So I'm just like all over the place.
I was gonna say, I feel like if I was you, I would have been excited until like the whole Southland just kind of came out of the woodworks to dump on
Yeah,
Texas. That was where they kind of took it like a little bit too far.
yeah, I'll admit it was quite funny. But it was just like a lot of restraint on my end.
All right, Marshall, I guess we'll start it with you and your team. Texas
Yeah.
A&M takes 2 of 3 from a very, very talented Mississippi State team. Ryan Prager Friday night didn't really have his best stuff. Friday they hit the ball right at people, lose 6-1. Then Saturday, um, Lampkin runs out, strikes out just about everybody he faces.
Mhm.
It's a huge, huge zone all the way around. You were on hand for all 3 games. What did you kind of see from Texas A&M this weekend?
Well, I actually thought that Ryan Prager actually had decent stuff on Thursday night. He went six and a third, and he gave up 2 runs, but 0 of them were earned on his part. So, I mean, just looking at the box score, I thought it was a good bounce back, especially like mentally for him after last week against Florida. And then Josh Stewart and Evan Ashenbach came in, did a solid job of securing that win. But I think the story of the weekend is the freshman Gavin Grahovic. I mean, on Thursday, the series started on Thursday night, and Gavin goes 2 for 4 with 2 home runs. One to lead off the first inning to get the offense going, and then a grand slam in the fifth inning to break the 2-2 tie. I mean, he's just playing out of his mind right now, especially when you hear the word freshman. It catches a lot of people by surprise. That followed up by Jace Laviolette and Braden Montgomery makes this a very, very dangerous top of the lineup.
Yeah, it's almost weird because I feel like they have not necessarily the best trio in baseball, but
Yeah.
they have one of the best juniors in Braden
Hmm.
Montgomery, top consensus top 10 pick, Jace Lavalette, who a lot of people have going 1-1 as a sophomore, and then Gavin Grahovic's playing out of his mind and is up there with the SEC Freshman of the Year talks. So,
Yeah.
I mean, A&M's really kind of doing it on both fronts. But
Hmm.
what really impressed me was both of his home runs on Thursday night were on breaking balls, and it's
Yeah.
ones that he fanned. I can't think of his name. Targosh. He fanned
Yeah.
Targosh with the slider immediately right before he sat on
Hmm.
it, knew it was coming, and hit it. I think it was said 480 feet. Just an absolute bomb in every sense
Yeah.
of the word. And then Saturday, Braden Montgomery has the 2 home runs. They do a lot of
Yep.
damage with 2 strikes. And honestly, I think that's a little bit of a credit to them because it was such a big zone for
Hmm.
Mississippi State. And A&M kind of made the adjustments. I think that's what it ultimately came down to is Mississippi
Yeah.
State kind of not necessarily complained, but you can tell that every time that they struck out, they kind of rolled their eyes a little bit. They didn't
Hmm.
really walk back to the dugout with the greatest sense of urgency, and
Yep.
A&M kind of made a ton of adjustments. Jackson, kind of give us an outsider's view. What do you think about the Aggies as they sit 3-3 in SEC play?
I mean, I think if you're anyone like facing the Aggies or kind of looking in on the Aggies, I think you definitely have to be scared of their bats. I mean, especially I believe it was on yes, this is on Saturday. They got out early and they just didn't look back at all. Gave up 1 run in the eighth, and then that was kind of that was about it. So I think if you're looking at them and your team's facing them, you definitely have to be concerned about the bats because they can strike quick and fast, and then they just shut it down. So
Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of worries me, if there is a worry with that offense, is they seem to always do damage in just that one inning. And then
Yeah.
outside of that, they kind of don't string good at bats together.
Hmm.
So they'll come in, like it seems like everybody will go like 1 for 3 and all of their hits will be in one inning. That's kind of the
Yep.
only not necessarily criticism of A&M, but that's just what I've noticed kind of about their offense.
Well, it's just
Joey,
not something you want to rely on going into the postseason, especially.
Yeah, and especially as they go into SEC play. Joey, was this A&M kind of returning to form? Was it Mississippi State returning to form, what we've seen the last 2 weeks? Who kind of impressed you in this series? Because I know I walked away being impressed with both teams.
Yeah, I was impressed with A&M, like more so because I was about to say, coming off that Florida series, it was going to be very tough to see if that was going to be the wake-up call they needed, and as it turned out, it was the wake-up call that they needed. And I'm looking at the pitching numbers right now. Having Lampkin's superior performance on Saturday was really helpful. So that's, of course, the Aggies have all the bats in the world, but having another key arm in the rotation step up like that is definitely critical for the Aggies from here on out.
And I never like to use the term fluke or anomaly, but the rate that he was getting batters to watch strikes, I think is something that we won't see going forward. So I think this weekend against Auburn is going to be a good indicator of kind of how he pitches going forward. You know, when the zone isn't always too big. Are we going to see Ryan Prager with his best stuff? Because again, he said on Thursday night that, that's kind of where you make your living, is he didn't have his best stuff. And kind of wanting to see more from the offense. But as we preview this Auburn series, Auburn sits 1-5 in SEC play. They lost 2 of 3 to Arkansas last week, and Arkansas kind of stole all 3 of those games, if I'm being honest with you. Auburn had a chance to win them all. Marshall, what do you think A&M needs to do to take 2 of 3 again, which is almost kind of turned into the slosh special at A&M?
Yeah, so one thing that I've noticed is that whenever Jackson Appel is playing good, he kind of just elevates that entire offense. And then he also he's a senior, so he leads too. And so I think that Jackson Appel may be one of the most underrated players in the country, just for what he provides to the team. Especially after last year when the catching spot was just kind of just such a question mark. He comes in as a graduate senior and just provides just steady production all year long. One thing that I will say is that I'm starting to question the second base spot. They're kind of rotating between Caden Kent and Ryan Targac right now. But that's kind of the spot that just kind of seems to be adding the least amount of production. I don't know what y'all think.
Yeah, Kent plays when it's a righty. Targac plays when it's a lefty. With Jurangelo, I guess they like the
0 hits on the weekend.
Better.
It's just a kind of adds a question mark in my head between the two of them.
And I think there's like a nagging injury with Travis Chestnut, and I can't confirm that, but I think that's what I heard, is that he has, a little bit of a nagging injury. But you mentioned Jackson Appel. I think the thing that it really impresses me is, obviously he's a senior and has a professional approach. He doesn't really seem to strike out a ton or really swing and miss. Like, it seems like every time he's putting the ball in play or fouling pitches off, I think that's the one thing that really impresses me. And then Caden Sorrell out and left is, kind of lets Hayden Schott focus on being just a hitter. And Shotty out there is obviously not a bad fielder, but Caden Sorrell kind of brings just another X factor. And if you can get power from somebody like that, I think that's going to go a long way. Jackson,
he had a solo home run in the 5th inning, but
and it was not a wall scraper at all.
It was
every stitch of it.
He stroked it for sure. But yeah, if you can get production out of guys like that, who, they're not going to make it in the headlines, but, very, very important to offensively and defensively. If they get production out of those dudes and just do not have to rely so heavily on, those top 3 in the order, that puts A&M in a great spot.
Jackson, we'll kick it to you. What do you think A&M needs to do to win this series at home and kind of stay up in the SEC?
So I was thinking, Marshall, honestly, I think if you get those top 3 in the order, if they're all hot, firing on all cylinders, I think you win the series easily. I mean, I think it's about as simple as that, because those 3, that's probably one of the best big 3s like in college baseball, if not the best big 3 in college baseball, especially with how versatile they are. They can all spray it all over the yard. They all know exactly what they're doing. They're all big league type hitters. They can be. So I think if they're all firing on all cylinders, I think you're set perfectly.
Yeah, I think the one thing, too, that's crazy about it is the balance. I mean, Gavin Grahovic hits from the right side. Jace Lavalette hits from the left side. Braden Montgomery's a switch hitter. So they have a lot of versatility there at the top. Joey, we'll kick it to you. What do you think A&M needs to do to kind of get a series victory here?
Yeah, I agree with what Jackson is saying. Basically, Grahovic, Laviolette, and Montgomery is what's going to carry them as far as they go. I know I've said that a while back, but if they keep doing their thing, then the Aggies should take care of business this weekend.
Yep, you heard it here
Definitely.
first, folks. One last thing, I think that the pitching staff's got to do a good job limiting Irish and McMurray. That's kind of, I think, going to tell the story of the series is who's kind of big dogs at the top of the lineup do their jobs. Moving on to probably the most confusing team in the country right now, the Texas Longhorns. They sit at 15-10, 2-4 in conference play. Obviously, they lost 2-3 to Washington last week. Needed a walk-off against Air Force. What?
They're 4-2 because we took 2 out
Yeah.
of 3 against Tech and 2 out of 3 against Baylor.
And I will say this. I want to do this with a little bit of an asterisk. That the opinion that I had on Texas Saturday at 8 a.m. is a little bit different than the opinion that I have now about Texas, as they really kind of righted the ship and did what they were supposed to do against Baylor. Joey, we'll start with you. What did Texas do well in Saturday and Sunday that seemed to be so hard for them Friday night and last weekend with the Washington series?
Well, for starters, we had a couple of guys step up in the rotation. I mean, Ace Whitehead, now that he's the Saturday guy, stepped up through a complete game, only struck out 5, got the win. Max Grubbs on Sunday was also pretty good in his run. 7 innings pitched, only gave up 1 run, 5 hits. So having that solidifying of the rotation is definitely a good start to have. And then we had Jared Thomas had 2 home runs on Saturday. So, and of course, Max Bellew had the 3 home run game on Sunday. So basically, the foundation of the rotation kind of showed, and in a way, it kind of led to some wins.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jared Thomas. He was somebody that last week I really kind of challenged just because he was somebody that I expected so much more of. I mean, yeah, he was still getting on base, go 1 for 3, but I really hadn't seen him break out and had the power numbers. Obviously, that was on display. And again, we joked about it with LeBaron that the quickest kind of way to remedy any bullpen issues you have is to just go a complete game. So I think that that's just what Texas needs to do is they just need to have LeBaron Johnson and Ace Whitehead go complete game every weekend. Marshall. Texas sits at 5-2 in Big 12 play. They sit a game back of Kansas State. They're tied with Oklahoma. How do you feel about the Longhorns at this point in the season?
Yeah, it's confusing with them because they may be the most inconsistent offense in the entire country. I mean, one game they're putting up 11 runs against a Big 12 opponent, and then they're putting up 1 run against A&M Corpus. And so it's just very confusing. But I mean, you saw it this weekend. We said last week, if Jared Thomas can get on track in this Texas Longhorns offense, then they're going to get it rolling. And you saw that this weekend. I mean, I believe he had 7 hits on the weekend. He's just such a force at the top of that lineup. If he can stay hot, then they're going to go a long way, along with guys like Kimball Schuessler. And then, I mean, if Ace Whitehead and LeBaron Johnson keep doing what they're doing, that they're going to get rolling here soon.
Yeah. And they're doing all this with Porter Brown. I think that's kind of been the most extraordinary part. Is he's sitting down in the 230s. That he's not he's either not going to stay down in that batting average too long, or B, they're going to get somebody talented to get in there and do it. Max Bellew has been really, really impressive as he has double-digit home runs. This kind of feels like where Texas does the best is what everybody kind of forgets with how good they are. Jackson, we'll swing it to you. How do you feel about Texas at this point in the season?
Well, on one hand, I'm really impressed with their rotation, obviously going deep in the game and keeping them in the game. And then on the other hand, I'm not extremely disappointed, but I mean, Will Gasparino, he had the 1 home run on Saturday, but he also had 3 Ks. I believe it was on I forgot which game it was on, but he had 3 Ks 1 game. So, I mean, that's kind of the freshman thing. I would obviously he's the freshman, he's going to struggle, but I would like to see him take a step forward, obviously. And then, as you said, Porter Brown, I think but if he could step up, that would be a huge catalyst in the Texas lineup as well.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it last year with Jalen Flores when he kind of got rolling there at the end. Maybe they move him to a DH spot so he can just focus on hitting, getting his timing down. That might be something that Pierce tries to take advantage of. But I got a question for y'all because there's been a lot of talk made about this Texas bullpen. As of 327, where do you think Texas sits in the country in ERA? Joey, we'll start with you.
It's a very surprising thing. I think I actually saw something, but it is like in the top 25, I think, top 30.
Yep, they sit at 23rd. They're
Yeah,
23rd in the
23rd.
country, right around Sam Houston, above Florida State, above Vanderbilt, above LSU, above Mississippi State, above Clemson. So the sky isn't falling for Texas.
Yeah.
They still have LeBaron Johnson. I think that they get a ton back. Marshall, bring us back down to earth a little bit with Texas.
Yeah.
What do you think Texas has going for them right now, and what do you think they need to kind of get better at?
Well, they're so close to being just that dominant dog in the Big 12. I mean, we just said it. The ERA, they have one of the best ERAs in the country, and when their offense is on, I mean, they're putting up 11, 12, 13 runs a game. I mean, they really, if their offense can just stay, they don't even have to do that. They just get a little more consistent with offensively. They're there.
Yeah, and I think we kind of see this weekend. I think will be a really, really big test for Texas as we kind of transition to that. Kansas State bangs the ball around the yard. They have a deeper lineup. They have one of the better bullpens in the country.
Yeah.
This is going to be kind of a measuring stick game for Texas. Joey, we'll start with you. It's been a long time since Texas went up to Manhattan, Kansas, and won a baseball series. Despite all the success, all the Omaha trips, I think it's been since Pierce's first year since they won in Manhattan. What does Texas need to do in order to succeed this weekend against Kansas State?
I'll just put it out there. They got to stay consistent. Like, as Marshall was saying, this is a team that when everything goes together, not many teams can beat them. So, if they can just keep playing hot at the plate, and then if we can just have more consistency from the pitching staff, live up to that, then I think they'll be a very, very tough out, even against the likes of Kansas State.
Marshall, we'll kick it to you.
Yeah.
Who specifically needs to have a breakout weekend for Texas?
Yeah. The easy answer is Jared Thomas. I think everyone knows that, but I'm gonna say Max Ballou. He leads the Big 12 with 10 homers right now. If he can stay hot and we always talk about how Jared Thomas is kind of the driving force in this offense. I mean, I said it a few minutes ago, but Max Ballou might be up there as well. You kind of see whenever he gets going, the rest of the offense kind of follows suit. So I'll say him.
Yep. Jackson, we'll kick it to you. Who do you think needs to step up at this weekend for Texas?
Obviously Jared Thomas is going to be the leader in that offense, but again, I would love to see Porter Brown string together some great at bats. Like, if he can just get going, I think that's a game changer in their lineup, honestly.
I'm going to go with Ace Whitehead. I think that if he can kind of get 2 starts back to back, I think you start feeling really, really good about this Texas team going forward. Joey, I know we've kind of taken all of the big guns here. Who do you kind of have being the X factor for Texas this weekend?
So for me, I think I'm trying to figure that out off the top of my head. I think I'm leaning towards someone in the bottom of the order, but I have 2 on my mind that I'm trying to figure out. I was about to say, I think Porter Brown would probably be the one I'd pick. He's been batting 9-hole in recent games, and I think he'll eventually come around. And once he starts hitting more consistently, that'll only do nothing but good things for the Longhorns.
Yep, I think Porter Brown, even if he can just start taking a little bit better at bats, working counts a little bit, he has an absolute cannon of an arm out there in the outfield. If he can kind of get those going, I think that'll be the biggest key. And I'm just kind of looking up here. Yeah, it's Pierce has never won a series in Manhattan. That was so this. I mean, granted, they haven't really played there every other year. It's been kind of a weird schedule. But Pierce has never won a series at Kansas State. Moving on, Jackson, to your Red Raiders. They had a very, very under the radar weekend that a lot of people, I think, didn't really care about. It almost feels dirty saying they played BYU Thursday. BYU beat them. Then they bounced back Friday and Saturday. Saturday, they obviously had the 10 runs. Is the Texas Tech offense back after that Saturday, Jackson? Are you ready to kind of hop back on that Tech bangs the ball around the yard bandwagon again?
I mean, I don't see how you can say no, honestly. Obviously, on Thursday night, it was a tough loss. I mean, Matt Hewer got hit around a little, was like okay at best. Trenton Parrish got hit around a lot as well. But on the Friday and Saturday games, I mean, the offense looked great. Cade McGee looked phenomenal all weekend. They mixed up the lineup a little bit as well. On Thursday, I believe Gavin Cash was hitting leadoff. Yeah, he went 0 for in the leadoff spot, but then later in the week, he kind of picked it up a little bit. Damian Bravo is still looking phenomenal. I mean, I don't know what else to say about Damian Bravo. Dylan Maxey got a start behind the plate also to give Vizell a day off, and he took advantage, went 3 for 4 on the day. So yeah, I mean, the offense is looking pretty solid, honestly. I mean, again, it's against BYU, so I'd like to see it against some higher competition, but you know.
I mean, BYU wasn't bad. They took 2 of 3 from Houston. I've noticed they started to use Bazell in the DH role a lot more recently. So I think that's something that I really kind of like is, you're not trying to overstress him or anything like that. You get some other guys at bats. I think Bazell hits the ball a little bit better from what I've seen when he DHs, obviously. But Marshall, I mean, Tech sits 3-3 in the Big 12. They're 2 games back. They're just kind of right in it. Where do you feel about this Texas Tech Red Raiders team? Because I really can't figure them out, if I'm being honest with you.
It's one of those schools. It's kind of how I felt about Texas a couple weeks ago. I'm back on the Longhorns. They're figuring it out right now. But Tech, I can't figure them out. It's guys like Gavin Cash. I just can't figure out if they've got it this year or if they don't. I kind of want to, he had a good day on what was it, Saturday. But I want to see him take that next step. He hasn't looked like the Gavin Cash that we, kind of knew from last season. And then also just Austin Green. I don't know about you, Jackson, but I've kind of seen him kind of just dwindle in production a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's there he's there some days, and then other games it's like you don't really know what's going on, but there's enough guys in the lineup where they kind of pick him up, so he's not really noticed. Like he goes kind of under the radar, so it's very confusing, honestly.
So Jackson, I want to ask you a question before. Sorry to cut you off there, Marshall, but
you're good.
Is Tech a good team because you know a lot of the guys and they've been there a lot longer, or do you give them a little bit more credit because they've been there for so long, like the Gavin Cashes, the Woodcoxes, the Tracer Lopez's? I mean, obviously Kevin Bazell's kind of far and away their best player, but that's kind of the thing that I run into is I feel like I know a lot of their guys and I've watched them play for so long. But are they really gonna be good against elite pitching?
I'm honestly, it's kind of confusing because we have a lot of the veterans, obviously the Drew Woodcoxes, the Gavin Cashes, but then on the other side we're extremely young. Like Tracer Lopez is only a sophomore, TJ Pompey is a true freshman, Damian Bravo is only a sophomore, Kevin Bazell sophomore. So it's kind of confusing. You don't really know how some of those guys are going to respond, obviously, to elite pitching. So I think you kind of have to wait and see. Obviously, the Big 12 isn't the greatest conference in America, so it's a little hard to distinguish that. But I'd love to see them play another top 25 team, just kind of see how the team responds. Especially, I think the last top 25 team we played was UT, and obviously that didn't go the greatest way.
And UT isn't ranked anymore, so it's kind of a weird kind of dynamic with Texas Tech. Is again, again, this is over a month ago, and I'm not holding this against them, but the offense disappeared against Oregon State. They didn't really play that good against Tennessee. I mean, they beat Oregon, and Oregon's kind of starting to work their way back into it. But again, they have UCF this weekend. Joey, we'll kick it to you as we kind of stopped with your analysis. What do you think Tech needs to do against UCF as they go on the road? New place halfway across the country. Everything kind of seems to be stacked against Tech right now from what we've known from Tim Tadlock teams in the past. What does Tech need to do to come out with a series victory this weekend?
As I like to say, pitching is the big deal, and I'm looking at the numbers from this weekend. They need Robinson to keep having a quality start like he did last week, and Washburn needs to step up. So if they can get the pitching on that back end that they had, then they should be in the thick of things, because we're not going to be concerned about the hitting, because having guys like Lopez, Woodcox, Cash, that'll keep Tech in. It's just what will happen with pitching-wise that'll be the difference between potentially sweeping them or get swept is how I see it.
Yeah, I don't think UCF has a ton of lefty freshman Baptists that kind of seem to be Tech's kryptonite against Baylor. So hopefully they kind of avoid those. Marshall, we'll kick it to you as Jackson kind of gives us our last in-depth analysis. UCF beat Oklahoma State early in the year. Mm-hmm. They're kind of in the thick of it. They're in the Big 12. I'm going to challenge you for prediction. Who do you think wins this weekend, UCF or Texas Tech, and why?
I'm going to say UCF. I think they
UCF.
take it 2-1. I really do. I don't see Texas Tech producing, like they should this weekend. I just don't see their top guys. I just don't know if they have it. Have it this weekend. Gavin Cash, Tracer Lopez, Austin Green. I just haven't. Tracer Lopez has been good, but Austin Green, Gavin Cash have not been up to par from what I'm used to seeing out of them. So I'm going to say UCF.
And they never seem to always click at one time. It always seems
Yeah.
like they'll go like
Mhm.
0 for 8, and then some guy will hit a home run, and that'll be their run. Jackson, I know that you're obviously probably going to go with Tech this weekend. What do you think Tech needs to do to win this series? Who do you think needs to step up? Who do they need to limit? Let's get a hard analysis from you here.
Well, on Sunday, I'd like to see Jack Washburn go over 5 innings. I think he's only done it once or twice this season. He's been pretty limited in all his starts, and I'd like to see him have a quality start, like longer than 5 innings, especially given the bullpen. Like the status of the bullpen is a real question. Obviously, we have Parker Gutierrez, who's an elite closer as a freshman, which is really impressive. And then on the offensive side, I think obviously if Cash isn't going to be there, or if whoever isn't going to be like on their day, I think Cade McGee has to step up. He stepped up last weekend. I think if he continues to step up, I think Drew Woodcock's, he's one of the oldest guys in college baseball. He's been around the block many times. So I think if he can just provide some veteran leadership this weekend as well, obviously going to a new stadium that no one's really ever played in before, I think that would be extremely helpful as well.
Yeah, and hopefully there's no rockets that go off there. We'll move on to, I guess, the most disappointing team in the country, TCU. Good news, they won on Friday night 1-0 as their starter threw a complete game gem, went like this with the Frogs. The bad news is that was about the peak of their offense as they lost 6-2 and 6-3 on Sunday. And again, Oklahoma State Sunday guy is not really that much of a dude. Are we starting to hit the panic button, boys, on TCU?
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
yeah. Big time.
I mean, they've seen regressions from Peyton Chatnier. Peyton Tolley really hasn't been effective as a hitter. The bullpen, which I thought was going to be a strength of TCU, really kind of has been their Achilles heel. It seems like everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. And all of the magic that they had where they played like crap and then pulled it out in the ninth seems that they just kind of spilled it early.
Yep.
Marshall, we'll start with you. What did you see from TCU this weekend?
Yeah, I saw their top of the lineup, top dogs offensively just continue to not have it. We said Jared Thomas and Peyton Chatnier between Texas and TCU. We talked about both of them. They both kind of had the same roles for this weekend. And we predicted that Peyton Chatnier needed to have a big weekend to get the Frogs going, and he just didn't. He had 1 hit all weekend. Anthony Silva, he had 1 hit all weekend, and Curtis Byrne, 2 hits all weekend. You see Luke Boyers hitting himself into the bottom of the lineup and then out of the lineup eventually. And then they're Friday and Saturday guys, Cole Klecker and Luis Rodriguez, they go. Klecker goes 3 1/3, 4 in runs, and then Rodriguez goes an inning and 2/3. All around, just panic button, hitting it hard.
It is worth noting too on Friday night that while they did have 2 hits, they scored them without a hit. The only run they scored without a hit, it was a walk, bunt error, sac fly, and that was their entire offense on Friday night. Joey, what more can you say about this TCU team? Where do they kind of go to stop digging themselves out of this hole that they've kind of created for themselves?
They just need to start hitting the ball because, as Marshall was referring to, nobody in their lineup had more than 2 hits, which is not good for a team with a lineup should be on paper like TCU's. And then I look at the starters, and yeah, Tolley did have the game of his life on Friday, but we can't be expecting him to do that every weekend if they want to do anything. I was about to say, Klecker needs to step up. Rodriguez, basically an all-around effort that needs to be stepped up for TCU.
Yeah, and Abel's kind of, I think, been a little bit more hit happy, I think, than he was expected to be, and definitely what he was last year. I think he's kind of having not necessarily a sophomore slump, but he's not looking as effective. I think the one thing that scares me about this TCU team going forward is I just don't think that they have the athletes that they had last year. Like, there's no Nunez, there's no Davis, there's no Trey. It just feels like they're a team that's supposed to be hitting that's in just a colossal slump right now. Jackson, we'll kick it to you. What's not it? We'll be positive. What's impressed you about TCU so far? What have they done good?
Well, I'm looking here. I mean, one positive is Ben Hampton out of the pen, went 2 innings, 2 hits, didn't give up a run. He was one of their only bullpen options that didn't give up a run. So, I mean, obviously I don't want to diss on TCU or whatever, but I mean, honestly, every one of their strengths is coming into the season, didn't perform this series. You had the lineup depth and the versatility of the lineup. The lineup did not hit. Cole Klecker, who was supposed to be their ace, their dude, didn't pitch to his top abilities. I mean, I'm looking here and where'd he go? Carson Bowen had 1 hit on the weekend. It was just not good all around. I just don't even know. Which is crazy because 3 weeks ago, this team was getting talked about as being one of the number 1 teams in the country, and then just fell apart.
They still are undefeated outside of Big 12 play. They're basically anti-Florida, as you know. They beat DBU in a midweek a few weeks ago. They beat UT Arlington, so they're still winning and they're still keeping their RPI high. But they sit 1-4 in the Big 12. Before we kind of preview that series, we'll kick it over to Houston, as Houston got swept by a very, very, very talented Kansas State team. What does Houston need to do, I think, to pull off? Is it an upset at this point? What does Houston need to do to pull up an upset? Jackson, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think if Houston, obviously, you have a massive – I mean, obviously you got swept by K-State, but compared to TCU, you have a massive momentum advantage here. TCU, they've been down and dirty for the past 3 weekends. There's no other way to put it. So I think if you're Houston, you have to capitalize on that. They have no momentum. So if you can go out there and get ahead early and kind of knock them down and you just step on their throats, I think you actually can have a successful weekend, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, they beat a talented Lamar in a midweek. They have a few guys, Ace Reese, Trey Jones. They got Tulamero back behind the plate. So there's a lot of pieces that are kind of in place for Houston to kind of get TCU while they're down. Marshall, what does TCU need to do to get some Lupton magic back, take 2 of 3 from a Houston team that's very capable of winning a series there?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of harsh to say this, but they have everything to lose this weekend, and Houston has nothing to lose. This is a huge weekend for the Horned Frogs. I mean, I'm going to say it again, same as last week. Chatagnier, Silva, those guys at the top of the lineup got to step up. You're getting quality starts out of Peyton Tolley at the beginning on Friday or game 1 as well, and so you need to capitalize on that. The games 2 and 3 guys, Klecker, he's got to be better, and then the game 3's kind of been a rotation, but someone needs to step up in that starting role. But yeah, I mean, you got to capitalize on your guys that are consistent on the mound. And yeah, I'll just say those guys at the top of the offensive lineup, they've got to pick it up.
Yeah, they are quickly running out of time there. They sit 2-7 in Big 12 play, while inversely, Kansas State sits at 5-1. Sorry about that. Joey, we'll swing it to you. What do you think TCU needs to do here? I know that I kind of keep saying that. Well, actually, no. I'll ask you a prediction. Who do you think wins, TCU or Houston?
I think Houston takes 2 out of 3. Is this in Houston or in Fort Worth?
It's in Fort Worth. It's at Lupton. But yeah, Houston already is used to playing on the road at home.
I was about to say that's gonna come in key for the Cougars. So I think I got them taking 2 out of 3. They're very familiar with playing on the road, and Lupton won't be too different for them.
I think I'm going to agree with you. I really like Houston in this series. I think that, they get Tulamero back. They have, according to Kansas State's coach, the deepest bullpen in the Big 12.
Oh, wow.
I would like to see TCU win a game where Tolley has his off stuff. Maybe he goes 6 innings, 4 or 5 runs.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really impressed me from TC if we can kind of see that going forward. Moving on, just a few notes. DBU took 2 of 3 from Sam Houston. Sam Houston won on Sunday, so they still have not been swept since all the way back in 2011. DBU Friday night. I mean, I got to see Ryan Johnson start as he went 9 innings, 1 run, 15 strikeouts. He's elite.
Ryan Johnson is unbelievable this year. He is outstanding.
I would go as far as to say he would start at every single Texas Friday night, and I think he would start over LeBaron Johnson.
You think over LeBaron?
I think he would start over LeBaron. I really do. He's got a nasty slider that breaks about like Hagen Smith does. He peaks at 98. He seems to get better as the game goes on. I really like what I saw from it. And then underratedly, I mean, Colton Atkinson I think is great. And Sam kind of makes themselves – they've quietly put themselves into a position to make the CUSA a 2-bid league, and Sam is an at-large bid. I know that feels weird saying this early, but do y'all see Sam as an at-large bid? Jackson, we'll kick it to you.
I mean, yeah, I can see them. They've been competitive all year, and obviously they're not bad by any stretch of the means. They're actually extremely good. This series for DBU, though, was huge, honestly. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 home runs. The offense just was clicking on all cylinders. I mean, there's just no reason to believe DBU isn't a top team in the country.
I mean, DBU still has to play Louisiana Tech. That'll be their other kind of big test. New Mexico State this weekend, I think, might give them a few problems just because they don't really match up well. But I think Ryan Johnson kind of shuts down that offense. Marshall, do we need to start having a talk about DBU being a top 8 seed in the country and hosting a super regional?
I don't see why not. I mean, they sit at 20 of 4. They're dominating. They have one of the best pitchers in the entire country. And then, up and down their lineup, I mean, they can punch the baseball. I mean, I think it was game 2. I don't know if that was on Friday or Saturday, but every single one of their runs came from a home run, I believe, which is very
Sam's
impressive.
Not like a
Against
Lindsey Nelson,
good,
Cracker Jack, A&M when the wind's blowing out. Like, it's a normal-sized ballpark, and they made it feel very, very small throughout the entire weekend. Obviously, Grant J is kind of the one that you circle, but Ethan Mann was kind of the one that really jumped out to me. The Miguel Santos took a bunch of quality at-bats. Joey, do you think we're crazy for putting DBU in that top 8 and being a super regional host?
The way I was thinking about it, they're definitely a regional host for sure. But I feel like they're in that like 8 to 10 range, how I see it. So they're like a bubble super team, a super host. But I think right now they're not yet Mize, but it's like not too much, like barely. They're like 9 or 10 Mize.
That's kind of how I feel about them as well. A few other notes outside of it. The Southland, Lamar's win streak, obviously it did last night at Houston, but they had at the time the nation's longest winning streak. Lamar has looked good. Incarnate Words look good. The Islanders beat Texas. It feels like the Southland is probably the most open division in all of baseball. Nichols is really good. McNeese has pitching. I think that's going to be the one thing to kind of track going forward. And if stuff happens, I would go as far as to say the Southland has a chance to be a 2-bid league. I know that feels weird saying, but if a few things happen a few certain ways, I think that could be a 2-bid league.
Lamar.
Yeah, I think Nichols can be an at-large, and then if Lamar, one of them gets in there. Marshall, any closing thoughts as we kind of hit that 38-minute mark?
Yeah, I mean, DBU, man, I got A&M at number 1 in Texas, and then I got DBU sitting a close second. I know Texas A&M plays SEC ball, but DBU is playing out of their mind right now, and they could make a run for that number 1 spot at some point. Who knows?
I feel the same way. I'm going to go as far as to say I think Houston is above Texas and Texas Tech at this point in the season.
I wouldn't say Texas. You think Texas?
I really like Houston against Texas in a series. I really do. Jackson, any closing thoughts? Where do you kind of see Texas in these rankings?
I mean, I think DBU is a top team in the country. A&M's a top team in the country. And then back to what you were saying about the hosting, I think DBU could easily host considering all the shakeups that there's been in the top 25. I mean, who knows what the top 25 is going to look like in 3 weeks.
And they
So-
always seem to try and have one smaller school be a top 8
Yeah.
seed. So it really is going to, especially with Coastal, they get a little help down there at the Birdbath with UTSA losing to Coastal.
Yeah.
Like that kind of helps their chances. Joey, any closing thoughts? As this is a weekend that hopefully we were talking good about Texas again.
Yeah, I was just about the top teams in Texas. I actually did, I was in a group chat with some of the few, I can't tell, with Texas college baseball, and I was actually getting an argument about the rankings. And I don't think Texas should have been ranked as high as we said. And I think Houston, I agree with you, that is better than, I can't even talk. It's been a long day, but Houston is definitely above Texas. And I agree with Marshall about how DBU will give A&M a good run of their money at the top spots.
I think that's all we have the time for. Everybody, do your signs one last time. I'll do. See everybody next week.
Hey, see y'all.
See y'all.